So I'll do one slide on morality in healthcare and then 2 slides in cooperation with evil. This is a very vast field, as you could imagine. So only to give, 2 days of it is, again, it's a stone skipping across the water. People get graduate degrees just in this, all right? But I want you to have some exposure to how the Catholic Church approaches it and how it lays out its principles. And you also have a decent foundation. At least I exposed you to natural law and some of the various ethical systems that other people could be put into place for this. So let's start. All right. So really this is an introduction to bioethics. If you chose or do choose one of those for your optional modules, we'd go into it deeper. But here we'll just kind of lay out some guidelines. As I said, you already know what natural law is. It's that which we cannot not know. It's the law written on our hearts. It's our participation in eternal law, all right? So here we are going to use it foremost because bioethics is a field that is based on natural law, but in light of divine revelation, okay? It is done in light of divine revelation. So we cannot do bioethics Bible only. If there is particular people who say, well, we only use Scripture, I don't know what you do when you start talking about the adoption of frozen embryos or various methods of continuing life or disproportionate care. I don't know where you come up with those things in Scripture. What was it again? In light of divine revelation. Okay, in light of divine revelation. So, what we have to help are what's known as the ethical and religious directives. They are just simply called in this field the ERDs, all right? And we're not going to go through them, and nor am I going to make you take a look at them. Maybe we might use those for the worksheet, I'm not sure. But the ERDs, it tells us right in them, has 3 very specific goals. And these are general, all right? So I could talk about one or define something if you'd like, if it's possible to define it. But again, they're very general. So the first goal would be to affirm ethical standards that flow from human dignity. Okay? So we're starting with the human person. You can almost hear the influence of John Paul II and his personalism. We are going to start with ethical standards that flow from human dignity. So the human person is the beginning of healthcare. That's why we have healthcare. Healthcare does not exist for the person. No, I'm sorry. The person does not exist for healthcare to be there by itself, but it's there to serve the human person. Also, it provides authoritative guidance on specific moral issues. And I'm going to comment a little bit after this to show you how this all fits in. So it provides authoritative guidance on specific moral issues. And the third goal, it provides professionals, patients, and families principles and guidelines for making decisions. So it provides professionals, patients, and families guidelines and principles for making decisions. Now, I think healthcare has come a long way. Most people do. And I can only talk about my experience with it since I don't have ever worked as an ethicist in a hospital. Has anybody ever seen the movie Patch Adams? Or heard of the movie Patch Adams? It's an older Robin Williams movie based on a real-life individual, Dr. Patch Adams, who, when he was in medical school, he hardly studied. He was always out helping people, but yet he had like the highest grades. They really thought that he was cheating. He's kind of like a professional clown, but I mean that in the most endearing way. He dresses up funny just to keep young people happy while he's treating them, and he's an idealist. So he did not like what he saw in healthcare, and he said he wanted to stop complaining about it, and he wanted to stop being part of the problem, and said, I need to find a way to be a solution. So he started a clinic, and he calls his clinic Gesundheit. And he would get other doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals from around the country or the world, and would treat people for free. and he would not carry any liability insurance. And if you sued him, you'd get nothing. And he also would not take any insurance payments. He simply come for free. And they lived communally. So he would live even amongst his patients. He did that for like 10 or 12 years and realized that he needs to set up a different structure. So he took a few years off to try to set up hospitals like this. So what I'm saying about him is he was the individual, not the, but he was of the type of individuals that said we're treating human persons, not diseases. All right, so you're not the gallbladder, the gallbladder patient. In fact, in the movie, as he's one of the interns walking behind one of the attending physicians, he stops the physician one time when they're talking about his pancreas or whatever and says, "What is the patient's name?" The doctor says, "Well, I don't know. What does it matter?" It matters, right? This is human dignity. Also, about providing various directives and principles, I can tell you my own personal issue. The day may come when you are with a parent or a friend, that is, in the latter part of their days. And it's not easy to make decisions. And you need principles and stuff to guideline you. You're obviously not in the best of mental states, right? So when my mother was at Reading Hospital, I could not have thought they did better. One doctor, I think he was an internist, we kind of hit it off, so while my mother was there, he'd stop frequently to say hi to her, but then we would talk for like 20 minutes. And we'd go back and forth about, how the Catholic Church does bioethics and what he thinks of it. And, he said, well, he has a living will and advanced life directives. And he says, how does the Catholic Church feel about that? I said, well, we're not so big on living wills, like what do you do in the end, but we like advanced life directives, but we'd rather a proxy there, somebody that can make a decision, because I know with my mother, things that we would call were disproportionate, after other things happened, became proportionate care. You cannot write something down looking forward thinking this covers every scenario, especially as healthcare advances and their medical abilities advance, right? So I thought they did wonderful. Okay, they were treating my mother as a person, and I had directives that helped, because I told him, I have a background in this, so that helped me make decisions that I went through. So anyway, this is very practical stuff. Okay, so just something about healthcare overall, and hopefully, I really try to stay politically neutral. Hopefully, you'll pick up on that. Is basic healthcare a right, a human right? According to the Catholic Church, yes, it is. It is absolutely a basic right. You get in a car accident and you have a ruptured spleen, you have an absolute right to care. We shouldn't just not care for you because you don't have insurance or you're poor. If you break an arm, it should be cared for. Now that doesn't mean everything should be covered, right? So I want to mitigate this so that you're not misunderstanding me. Because the Catholic Church says that health care is a basic right, that does not mean they endorse any particular way that right may be expressed, okay? They do not endorse any particular right way that right is expressed. So before you think, oh, so the Catholic Church thought Obamacare was great. Well, they think you have a basic right to health care, and if we could find a way to get everybody health care, yes, that's great. But there was obviously parts of that they didn't like. Otherwise, parts of the members of the Catholic Church would have been suing the government, okay? All right, so then Donald Trump's in there now, and what he's going to do and tweak it, well, the Catholic Church is for that. Well, no, okay? The Catholic Church says that it's a basic right. How that plays out, doesn't mean they endorse all those different ways. So we have to be careful with that. Now this leads back to what I said about that individual, Patch Adams. We're addressing the whole person, right? We respect that person and we protect their dignity at any point during this. And again, this has been my experience in healthcare. My general practitioner tells me, we want you to have a good life, right? She's not focused on everything I do is like pure health that leads to a long life. We want you to have a good life. That's an individual who is treating the person, all right? So they don't see you as an illness that needs to be corrected. We see you as a person that needs guidance in your own, and participate in your own healing process, right? Yes.
After a
Well, there was no just one line. It was what I said about, you know, it doesn't mean that they endorse any particular expression, right? So you have to make treatment decisions in light of informed consent. And again, not that I've had any experience like this, but if some doctor were, because you know, there are goofs in every profession. There's no profession, whether it be teaching, the medical profession, or business, where you don't have people who are full of themselves and say, I know what's best, right? Or the doctor that, you know, and I have had this experience, but it's more of a bedside manner than it is anything, you know, particular to this, where the whole time you're talking to them, their back's turned to the writing. You know, I had one doctor, I just stopped talking. He goes, go ahead, I'm listening. I said, no, you're not. I mean, I'm paying for this. I would appreciate it if you turned around. I'm not trying to be smart, but you know, let's have a conversation. I'm not interrupting. Am I interrupting something? You know, that kind of thing, right? That's been the exception, right? So, but that's not what I'm talking about here. In other words, when you have treatment, you should be part of that and consent to it. Now, that might seem obvious, but not always the case. Okay, what's in this square? I'm not requiring you to write down or to know for notes. But that being said, you might find it to be good fodder for the dialectic coming up, okay? These are things that the URGS would cover, or would at least help in principle, okay? So tomorrow we will talk about the distinction between proportionate and disproportionate care. We used to say ordinary and extraordinary, but that has kind of gotten blurred, so now the church uses disproportionate and proportionate care, but you can let that go. Like if you're in your 60s, it doesn't matter really the age, and you're on dialysis, and you're 3 times a week, 3 hours a pop, it's too much. It's wearing me down. Or you're older and you have to go for treatments. At some point, you can just say, I don't want to be treated anymore. I understand that now I will slowly die, but that's not suicide. You know how to come up with a moral object. That's just accepting the finality of the human person. We don't live forever. As far as tissue and organ donation, 100% behind it. You will not need it when you are dead. So if you can make some way visible for the doctors to prepare to remove these organs and give them to people who need them, they are life-saving. I mean, you should know people who have gotten these. We had a guy here a couple of years ago that with a heart transplant. Okay, it's only because somebody had the generosity, you know, to donate the heart from their young person that tragically lost, right? So this could be anything from corneas, you name it, right? Prenatal fertility treatments. So there are a lot of fertility treatments that are good, right? So hormone therapy, natural planning and stuff, but there are fertility treatments that are not good, in vitro fertilization and such, okay? Prenatal. They have come so far with prenatal care, right? When my children were being born, which are a little bit older than you, there was no sonograms because insurance would not pay for it. There was no reason to have a sonogram. So I remember talking to the OBGYN, and he said to me and my wife, would you like to have like an amniocentesis? We could draw fluids. I said, and what would be the reason for you to do that? They said to find out if there's any abnormalities in the unborn fetus. I said, if there was an abnormality, would you be able to go in and correct it in utero? They said, no. I said, then there's no reason to do it. Now, I knew what he was asking. That was a coy way of saying we can find out if the child has Down syndrome or something, and maybe you consider an abortion, right? Now, today, different, right? My daughters, one of them just had a baby, the other one's pregnant, have had multiple sonograms. So there's many things they can do. But is it corrective, or are you doing it to select? That's a difference. Euthanasia, always wrong. It's the deliberate taking of a life, whether it's active, passive, intentional, or unintentional. Death preparation. My cousin that went through that, right, when he was brought into hospice, what a wonderful way to go. I mean, it's a room that looks like a family room. There's medical care there, and they're just trying to make you comfortable. And all the family can stay there, and it's comfortable for them. That's a lot better than a hospital room. So I think most hospitals are doing a terrific job with this. And also, there are some medicines towards the end, like say morphine, right, that can almost make you incoherent, maybe even in an unconscious state, but you're out of pain. So that's something that you weigh out, right? How do you want to spend the last days? In the end, we have to avoid scandal, all right? So we're going to talk now. When I flip the slide, even though it says formal cooperation, there's one or two things I still have to premise before we begin. But remember, the first principle of morality, do good and avoid evil. We will not do evil that good may come of it. We are not consequentialists. We're not going to say, hey, they didn't really, agree to organ donations, but they're going to die and the family won't know. No, you do not do that. It's not informed consent, right? We also are not deontologists. We're not going to say, hey, these are our hospital rules. I'm sorry, but we can't really give you that saving medicine. It's not part of our rule. I mean, so we know that we form everything through an object, an intention, and a circumstance. Okay, so again, before I start with formal, let's just say why are we even talking about cooperating with evil? Why are we even bringing this up? Well, we already know that we live in a world where we don't all, think alike, right? So we live in a world where, whether we like it or not, we're participating in a broad network of relations, right? We are participating in a broad network of relations with varying goals. And this is who we are. Banks don't just lend money. They want to make money. They have employees to worry about. Hospitals don't just have patients. They have doctors and nurses. And there are things connected to the hospital. There's business offices. There's how do we make insurance claims? You guys know the vast network.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, it's a broad network of relations with varying goals. Okay? Which then makes it inevitable, whether we like it or not, there are simply unavoidable circumstances of cooperating with evil. You're going to find yourselves in a situation where we're going to have to ask ourselves, should I do this? I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't give a crap. I'm making money. I mean, we make these decisions all the time. Every one of you will. So if anybody finds this to be impractical, you're just scoffing over it. I have some examples. And I just did these this morning, so if they're a little goofy, my apologies. So is it licit for a banker to give loans to people who are unable to pay? I had a cousin, the one I talked about that died in the hospice. That was his regret. He was a commercial investment banker. And he says, I know that I gave money to people in franchises that I knew they were never going to make it. I mean, I knew it. He said, I regret that. They went bankrupt, Oh, that's what would you do? How about if you were the assistant that were setting up the appointments? In other words, you know that these people are not going to make it, but you're the one that has to make the phone calls and says, hey, he'll be here, that. I mean, do you feel comfortable with that? Now, I'm not making judgments right now. I'm just throwing you out here. These are things we think about. How about an investor that invests funds in a company that exploits other people or maybe the environment? Would you feel comfortable having stock in those companies? Is it illicit to charge what the market can bear? You guys go into business, that's like the capitalistic motto. What the market charges, as much as you possibly can. Why wouldn't you? Are you stupid? Why would you want to charge less than somebody else if you can get that much for it? That's their attitude. Well, how about things that are required by law for people to have? Home, auto, health insurance. Do you feel comfortable charging what the market can bear? And if you seem to be too big of a liability, see ya. Happened to me, right? With a company for 12 years, you make a claim of $4,500, and they drop you. So-called hostile takeovers, where they come in, they buy the company, liquidate them, fire the employees, and everybody makes money except the people that work there. All right. How about this enormous wages that some executives are paid? You have executives that are making $3, $4, $5 million, and they're laying people off. Would that be you, right? Is it licit to work as a nurse? If the doctor you're working for does abortions, would you feel comfortable with that? Forget about feeling comfortable. Do you think that's moral? Or how about if you're just a nurse that worked in the same hospital wing where abortions? Is that okay? How about if you're the engineer who keeps the mechanicals of the abortion clinic working properly, but that's what you do? I'm just, I work on the heat system. How about if you're the taxi driver that drops off a person at Planned Parenthood? Should you do that? Is it licit to provide drug users with clean needles?
hey, if you're not going to stop doing drugs, at least use a clean needle. That way you won't get, HIV. Is it illicit to drive? How about if I'm the person driving the van that distributes the needles? I'm not even the person that distributes it. I just drive the van. Yeah, ask yourselves that. Is it illicit for a politician to support abortion and euthanasia? I mean, if those are Catholic politicians, can they support those? Should you support a politician that wants to see businesses get as big as possible or government to get as big as possible? Do you believe the Catholic Church isn't like either of those? Or how about if you were to vote for such a politician? Can you exaggerate in advertising? Make wild claims that at least get it sold. Hey, it's not like I flat out lied. I just exaggerated. Or can you advertise in any venue? Would you want to advertise in a KKK's newsletter? Just trying to put it out there. There's all kinds of things like that, right? And I have no idea. I think it's supposed to mean, is it illicit to exaggerate in promoting a product or a service, right? Or to work for a notorious company that's known, right? So these are the things that I can't imagine anybody in your life, you're not going to hit some of this stuff. So how do you then work through it? I mean, I'd rather you not work through it by saying, well, I'll just do what I feel, Now, I'm giving this to you two ways. I'm giving this to you in this, what I'm calling a written way, and then at the end, I will have like a tree diagram. So if you want visually, because that's who I am, I'm the visual person, right? So here's how the tree diagram will look if you want to start it out. You're going to have two things on top, and one will be formal, and one will be material. So again, because you know the four causes, you should already be thinking formal material causes. Under the formal, you will see explicit and implicit, like a branch. Under the material, you will see immediate and mediate. And under immediate, you'll see two more branches. All right, so that you get how this works. By the way, I don't want you to interpret this as mechanical. This isn't like, I have an issue, let me go to the diagram and see where I'm at. It's not that simple. This is very well thought out, and it's very deep stuff. The man who taught me this was a Catholic priest who happened to has a PhD in neuroscience from Yale, and he did all his postdoc work at Harvard. Not a lightweight, all right? And by the way, he works at the National Catholic Bioethics Center, which is right in Philly. So if you ever did have a situation, you could call there for free counsel, right? Like, here's what's going on. And they have the ethicists online that will help, right? So anyway, a formal, they share the intention. We're okay with doing it. I intend to do this. It's explicit if it's done for its own sake. For example, if I were a doctor performing the abortion, and I'm fine with abortions, so I'm glad I'm doing this, then that's explicit, formal cooperation. It's as bad as it gets, all right? If you do share the intention, but you're doing it for some other good. In other words, I'm a doctor that's performing the abortions, and I don't have a problem with abortions, but the reason why I'm really doing this is because of the money. I mean, I have a lifestyle. I have, kids in college, golf memberships, they start adding it up. So he's not doing it because he's just an advocate for abortion. He has some other reason that's really compelling him. Or it could be a nurse, all right? So that would be implicit formal cooperation with evil. That, too, is not good, okay?
Mrs. Case, please call the main office.
Not saying anything. Being recorded. All right. Now, let me flip it over to material. And then, like I said, I will leave the chart up at the end, and I really think that's going to help. By the way, I had to put that chart together because that's the only way. I'm a visual person. I need to see it. Now, on the material side, you no longer share the intention. You might even be on some levels opposed or kind of like grossed out by the fact that you're helping with an abortion.
but what you're doing is still essential to the act. Maybe you're the nurse that's working, one of a suction unit or something else, okay, depending on what type of abortion you're doing. So, what you're doing is essential. You may the whole time maybe thinking, I don't want to do this, I don't like this, or maybe, you're just there because you're weak, all right? But it's essential. I mean, we remove you from the act, this abortion stops in process, right? It's essential that you're there. That would be immediate material cooperation with evil. Mediate is broken. There's immediate, and it's broken in two different ways. So if you want to know, instead of me writing this out, mediate, how this is essential, mediate is it's not essential. But there's two branches underneath mediate. The first one is proximate mediate. What you are doing has a direct influence, and it's ordered towards the act. I mean, whatever you determine the object of the act is, like we did that before, it's ordered, it's going towards that. So, in other words, your friend says, look, I'm pregnant. I can't let my mom know. I have money, but I need you. Can you loan me $150 and give me a ride to Planned Parenthood? Now, you might be saying, I'm against abortion, but I want to be a good friend. What you're doing has an indirect influence, but nonetheless, it's ordered towards the act. By you driving them there, you're complicit. And if you want a legal analogy, it would be like you driving the getaway car at a bank robbery. You may not be as guilty, but you're not going to be off the hook if you get caught, all right? So this would be, in moral terms, you're not off the hook, all right? The last one, and this is the only one that we would say is licit. This is what you are doing. You don't share the intention. What you're doing is it has indirect influence, and it's not ordered towards the act. In other words, if you stop doing what you're doing, the abortion doesn't cease, right? So maybe you're a nurse on the hospital wing where abortions occur, but you take vitals. You're taking the blood pressure, oxygen levels, taking blood. You're taking blood samples, but you're going from room to room. People might be there for a cyst removal, might be there for abortion, you name it. Okay, that's okay. So this would be like my friend who wanted to. He didn't feel comfortable going to a Planned Parenthood office to work on the phone systems. He thought that was not right. I said, no, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. But nonetheless, I mean, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. But morally, you're okay. Bless you. Now, this again is the only licit, acceptable cooperation with evil. And I'll put the chart up for you. So, we make these decisions all through our lives. So, what did Solzhenitsyn, remember I had you guys read Solzhenitsyn's address? What did he say we lack? Courage. What do you need? Courage. Now hold on, I'm going to put the diagram up. That might clear it up for you. So yes, in other words, if I were a pharmacist and they came to me and said, I want the Plan B to stimulate an abortion, I'm sorry, I'm not giving that to you. In other words, this is our problem with some of the healthcare laws, is that they didn't contain conscience clauses. You have to allow me to opt out. You have to allow a person to opt out based on their conscience, all right? By the way, let me say this so that you know I'm all over the board politically. You know that the cake issue, where we're not going to make a cake for a gay wedding, there was no issue there morally. Even if it's a devout Catholic, you say, I am not for 2 women or 2 men to be married. You making them the cake, that's remote mediate cooperation. You're not going to stop the wedding because you didn't put their names on a cake. All right? Okay, so here's my tree diagram because it helps me, right? So this is all cooperation with evil. We have to first determine if it's formal or if it's material. And the way we do that is by, do they intend it? Do they share the intention or do they not? If they share the intention, it's formal. If they don't, it's material. If they share the intention, are they doing it for its own sake or for some other good? Either way is bad, but at least we can identify, well, I'm doing it because I need to keep up my lifestyle. Okay, that's implicit formal cooperation with evil. You read it from the bottom up. Okay, well, how about a person over here that it's not essential what they're doing, all right? But yet, they don't concur, but you drove the person. I mean, it still was ordered to the act. That'd be proximate, immediate, material cooperation with evil. If you're a visual person, that's a lot easier for you. Any questions? All right.